Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I'm your host, Staci Joy Dempsey, and like always, thankfully, I have one of the other daughters, the one and only dad. Good morning and good afternoon to both of you, and to all of our viewers and our listeners. Thank you guys so much for choosing to tune in with us. How are you guys making out today, dad and
Great.
daughter?
Beautiful day, beautiful morning.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
Yes.
All
Spring
good.
is springing over here in New Jersey, and we are going to spring right into into our topic. So Jennifer's getting ready to come up. Well, she's already hit it. 10 years in business, fastest 10 years of our lives, probably the toughest 10 years too, but we'll get into that maybe a little bit later. But what we kind of wanted to talk about today was, how do we communicate with our clients or our customers, when we're growing, AKA we want to make some changes. So Dad, I'll start out with you because I think you've probably had to do this a couple of times in your career. So why don't you kind of start us off with just what can that look like when you're going to have to start communicating? You made the decision that some things need to change, we're growing. Now, how do we kind of get that out to our clients and our customers?
Yeah, I mean, I think change, is such a, it's such a huge topic. It's ongoing because change is ongoing, and so, it's just, first of all, I think we all have to recognize no matter where you're at in your business life, whether you're starting out, whether you're 5 years, 10 years, or pushing 40 years or more, it's always going to be there and you're always having to navigate change. So first of all, getting comfortable with change is the first thing. But then there's change that comes at us, that we just have to manage and adapt, whether it's technology, whether it's, products, whether it's, pricing, whether it's the economy. But then there's the change we want to make. There's changes to say, okay, we need to be thinking a little differently now that we're, 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the business, because what we did starting out may not be making sense today, from a bottom line standpoint. Because let's face it, when you're starting out in business, you're just trying to generate business, whatever it is, whether it's retail, whether it's service, whether it's professional. You're just trying to generate business so you can keep the doors open, keep the electric bill paid, and hopefully a little food on the table. But over time, as your business gets established, then you have to look at things as if, all right, well, is this the best use of my time? Is it the best use of my team's time? Is it the best investment of revenue from the business, from a continued growth? And that's where it can get a little, sticky from a communication standpoint, because some of those changes that you have to make, your customers and clients have maybe grown used to, and now all of a sudden you're having to say, okay, yeah, we know you're used to this, but it's something we're going to have to do differently, or it's something that I'm going to have to do differently. Maybe you have clients or customers that are used to dealing with you, the business owner, strictly. And now it's like, for whatever reason, I can't do that. So now somebody else is going to be working with you. So communicating that, or maybe in our case, sometimes we have, people on our team that have been servicing accounts for a lot of years, and we have to make some adjustments. We have to kind of change around that. And so now all of a sudden we're having to contact the client and say, the person who's been servicing your account for the past, 10, 15, 20 years is not going to be doing it anymore, and so, you can get pushback saying, well, why, they're great, they're always this. And so, but, just have to do it, so, you try and work with your clients, of course, work with your customers, but so just being able to, have a good communication around it, and a good why, I think, is important. But, those are just things that you have to, because sometimes you just kind of stay in a place just because you're fearful that you're going to upset a client or upset a customer. So you don't make the change, and then it hurts you in other ways. So, and in some cases, you might lose a customer or you might lose a client that you don't want to. That doesn't feel good. But, but sometimes you have to be willing to take that chance.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Jen, 10 years, definitely have done some growing. That's for sure. Definitely implemented some changes. I'll be honest with you, when we first started talking about this, what came to mind was when people get in your chair and you're getting ready to, you've contemplated, you're going to make a change in your business. You tell every single client when they're in your chair as if there's no other clients. Like, hey, I want you to know this. I want you to, I want you to be able to ask me questions. Like you really be hustling. This is what we're going to do. And it's going to be a little uncomfortable, but it's going to be good for me. It's going to be good for you, client, customer. Anyway, changes, growing. Why don't you share with our viewers and our listeners a little bit about what are some other ways maybe you've approached communicating with clients?
Yeah, it's such a big topic. Well, I'll say, 10 years ago when I first opened the business, it was like hustling, and most small businesses are that way, right? When you first open, it's like it doesn't matter what, when, where, what time of day, like I'm doing it. And so obviously, as you go through years of owning your business and hopefully growing your business, change is going to come, whether you want it to change or it's forced upon you. And I mean, obviously, we talk a lot about like your seasons of life change, you change, the things that you want change. Maybe your family life changes. So, I think the longer you're in business and you have clients and customers coming into your business, they get used to things being a certain way. And one example is like I used to work at nighttime. I would be in the salon at, until 8, 9 o'clock at night. Those clients that work that more traditional 9 to 5, right? They're getting off work at 5 p.m. They're coming to the salon to get their hair done. And, just recently, that just doesn't work for me anymore. Like I cannot be in the salon past 5, and I don't want to be, right? I don't want to be in the salon past 5. And so, that change alone has to be well thought out, and how can I still keep the same level of value to my business, still being able to offer certain things to my clients, or those clients that work during the week, during the day. And so, maybe they have to go see a different stylist, or they need to come on the weekend, or whatever that looks like. But of course, whenever we make a change, we try to make sure that there's a solution for everyone. And like Dad said, it's not always going to work for everyone, but in the grand scheme of things, it is what's best for me, and it's what's best for the business, and ultimately it will work out for the clients. And the beauty in all of that is when you have been working with clients for a long time, or you have long-time customers, they've seen you through these seasons of life, so they want to support you in that. And they want you obviously to be happy and thriving in those ways, which is always, a wonderful feeling to feel that from your community. But like Staci said, it's difficult, right? It's difficult. And so for me, I never wanted it to be like any change I made inside of my business. I never wanted it to be like a surprise or an overnight thing. So I've always worked really hard on, like, obviously we're communicating through email, through our social media, and then obviously face to face, and just being as transparent as possible. And, it hasn't always been a great response, right? Some people just don't understand the vision or understand where you're trying to take your business. And that's okay, right? not everyone's going to agree in those areas. But no doubt, if you're starting a business, obviously year 1 and year 10 is going to look completely different, in how you work and why you work and what you're trying to get out of it. It's funny. I had a longtime client in on Saturday, and obviously there's been changes with me having my second daughter. And she was just sharing, like, you worked so hard to get to the place that you are. Like, I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you that you're not working at night and that you're able to enjoy, being home with your daughter and things like that. So, the beauty in all of this is that people really do support you and what you're doing and like to be along, for the journey of your business. So keeping that in mind. But, change is going to happen. You want to evolve over time. So, you just have to embrace change. That's probably our biggest piece of advice for anyone in business. Like, try to embrace change because it's going to happen. If you fight against it, you're just going to be frustrated and have a headache all the time.
Which will in turn frustrate your clients and customers, right?
Right.
There's, if you're not going to grow, if you're not going to, change anything, inevitably there's going to be problems, and it will just continue to get worse and worse and worse. And that eventually always filters down to the clients and customers. Always. Sorry, Jen, I didn't mean to cut you off, but.
No, that's okay. But, just even outside of our businesses, one thing that came to mind is, like, let's take a business, for example, that all of a sudden decides to close on Tuesdays. People are like, well, why are they closed on Tuesdays? I like going there on Tuesdays. And again, there's a reason for everything, right?
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't always have to be like this dramatic change. And most of the time it's not a dramatic change. It could just be these little tweaks inside of your business that you're constantly working on, that you're constantly doing, that add up to the bigger picture. So, believe me, it doesn't have to be like this huge like email blast and this and that. It's just, constantly leaning into changing things and hopefully making them better.
Yeah.
Well, and I like what you said, Jen. I think that's something that, for people to make a note of is that, if it's something that, will be perceived as, disruptive for a client or a customer. And, then maybe, look at it and says, all right, how can we implement this over some time so we can allow people to start getting used to it rather than, okay, as of June 1st, this is going to be completely different, or it's going to change from something to something else. How can we build that in? And in some cases that might not be feasible, right? It might not. Maybe sometimes it might be saying, let's just do it, and then we'll deal with, the ramifications, but trying to implement it over time isn't going to make sense either. So, but if you can, I think that's important, try to get people used to something, the change that's going to be, that you're doing. And so, and then just communicating. The other thing that you said, in today's world, that was different than not too long ago was email blast or
Right.
social media, to be able to start communicating out to your followers, to your clients, that, hey, we're making this change. Here's why, and really use that to your advantage, to kind of help them see the vision, too. That doesn't take the place of, more personal communication with clients and customers, but it definitely helps kind of build that vision out there too. So again, we're in a good time business wise from that perspective. It's much easier to communicate that than, send a letter to everybody by snail mail and hope they read it and, or if they read it, they understand it, that type of thing. Because with technology, you can kind of build something out that's going to touch on it periodically at very, very little or no cost.
Great point. Great point. And keep in mind, clients are resilient. The ones that really enjoy your service, they like doing business with you, they're resilient. So the ones that like to come in on a Tuesday, they'll figure out how to come on a Thursday. If you're not meeting at night anymore, they'll figure out a way to fit into your schedule, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So have faith that your clients and customers will, kind of ride it out with you in whatever change that you need to do. So, well, we hope that this topic has been helpful, and we'll see you guys in our next episode. Bye.